I am live. Okay. Answer to everything. I think it was the State of the Union. But just if you could, and I don't know if it's going to show up here, if you could put, you're seeing me, um, I can see some comments, hopefully. And sometimes I definitely can't, but I talked about there's Jacqueline. So yes, so Jacqueline. So I'm gonna go ahead and pray. You guys could spread the word, and this is just gonna be an important time. Okay. So I'm gonna grab my Bible over here. I have Jesus, you're the man of hope. You're the God of hope. We hoped in your Father that John 3 comes and says that you're being baptized, John 1 and 2 and Matthew, just being baptized in my beloved Son, and John 2:17, whom I'm well pleased, and then immediately is led into the wilderness. And is led into those temptations. And he says, I trust in God alone. I hope in God alone. Even as Jesus, you were being led to your death, the death you chose. You said, Father, can this cup be taken away from me? But then you said, no, I must die. I must die. Cleanse sins. The original sin, that original design can come about on the planet. The beauty and the wonder of original design, according to your brilliance, according to the heavenly Zion, according to the saints that shine like stars, according to the escort of angels, according to the singing rose trees and flowers, and according to the trees that decree, according to the river of life, according to seraphim, cherubim, the elders, the wonders of this hour, that we've come to this city. It says in Hebrews 12:23, that we're going to come to it. We've come to the city. And this is where we live. And so you hoped, Jesus, in your Father, even when your eyesight was dim, said, I trust in him. I trust in him alone. You said, not my will, your will. And you hoped in people, Jesus. Jesus, you looked at the woman in John 8 and said, you can be redeemed. Your beauty, your original design, you're not far enough away from me because you went to the bed of another man. It's just not the socially accepted sin. Now there are some, but just it's a radically look down upon sin. But you accepted that woman and received her, and the Pharisees, they were going to throw the rocks. John 8, you just wrote up their original design. I believe that second time in the sand. So, and if you would have wrote their sin, they would have thrown the rocks at you. But they just saw dignified, noble, original design about them, stately men, and they turned through rocks. Yeah, just the way you hoped in the people that put you on the cross, said, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. You were not so outraged and alienated by people and their pains, and even when they threw their pains at you, said, I came to save mankind, and you do what you intend to do. Hoped in people. Hoped in the next generation. You said children are a blessing from the Lord. In Matthew 18, let them come unto me, and it's children of every age. And said there's a way to bring them in. Our sons and daughters to come from afar. It's challenges of the world. We're not going to magnify evil. We are not going to accept the socially accepted drug that's doubt. It's now towards the world. It's now towards people, the next generations. It's now towards cities and nations. When you said Psalms 24, open up the gates of the city, let the King of Glory come in, let all the nations praise you in Psalm 67. It's just not a statement. There is no place is worse than Nineveh. And you said, do I care about this great city? And can I turn it to me? You did. Hope in prayer. You said that we could decree things with the Father, that was a time in the past where they didn't pray, but the high priest prayed. And then you opened up the door and you said, Jesus, you said to us, we can pray through you. And then you said, now you can go to the Father directly and we can co-create and decree. It's a new era. It's a new age. It's a new hour. It's a new wonder. These next 10 years are the years of original design. Oh, they're the years of attunement, to attune to love and the wisdom of love and what love really looks like, what hope really looks like. It's so much greater. This is the years to ascend, to see heaven and see heaven brought to the earth and believe it's more powerful than any little darkness on the planet. So we kind of magnify, not the God of evil, but we magnify you, our God, your greatness. We magnify you as a God of hope. Hope, that seedbed. It says we can expect good from God. In the land of the living, that the whole earth is to be a seedbed of hope. Business is to be a seedbed of hope. It's not those greedy business people. You said John 21, the fishermen, they needed to have for their business fish, and you get them fish. You have hope for families. It's seedbed that we believe this one of three immortal values, forever values, eternal currencies. It's love. And what's the strength and the strongest love? Hope, that hopes all things. And then it hopes all things, the seedbed for what Peter said. Can I walk on the water? I got a hope. And then you declared, yeah, you can. Then that faith took place. And he stepped on that water. Blind Bartimaeus. He said, can I see? I'm shouting in hope that I expect something good from God. And then you said, yes, you can. That seed of that faith met him in the moment. Those lepers in 2 Kings 7, where the people had given up, depressed, everything been taken from them. And they said, we're going to die anyhow. It looks like, let's wander down there and see if those who took from us, if they're where they're at. And they come down there and they abandoned the city and all the goods. And it was all there. And they had many times more than what they had in the first place. They didn't abandon their hope. You call us to be prisoners of hope. You call us for not only redeemed salvation, but a life well lived in your promises for the years upon the years upon the years. So God, we ask you to open us up as we're having this discussion in this place where I believe we know that you are opening up to us a whole nother understanding and expression of Christianity, that it's hope-filled Christianity. It's big as the first Reformation. That was, how are we saved? And no, gosh, it's not by our works, but we're saved by grace. No, it's not by our suffering and our dying and persecution, but it's by this gracious gift that you give us blessings without reproach, and that it causes us to live out a life full of hope and full of your promises. And you love our confidence in you, like my Father loved my confidence in him, and my children, I love their confidence in me, that I could give them good gifts. And I being evil, how much more you? Awaken us to this hour we're in, and the littleness of the evil that is upon us at this time compared to your great goodness. And let your hope reformers, your compassionate ones, that the brilliant minds would be awakened, that we bend against the mind. We've said, shut that thing down. It's a beast. No, it's to be renewed. Or the world sees such a shallow, superficial understanding based on principles versus a wisdom that takes into account the variables. And it's a mind that's filled with love, and love, out of love, all things are discerned. It says, love leads to, in Philippians 1:18, to all discernment. Give us those minds filled with love that leads us to the true discernment that just doesn't cause us to get afraid of people's positions or ideas and react, but then we can see beyond that. Their hearts, their needs. We can see the original design of nations, that each one is a flavor of you, called to be a flavor of you. We just ask you to explode us out of this cloistered reality of fear and abandoning the earth, and it's going to be like Nazi Germany. And just, God, we give ourselves, you say, if we don't say that you're greater than the nations, how can you dispossess them? We believe you are, in Jesus' name, amen. Where'd I go? I totally turned around. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay. Yeah, I was turned around. So let me just open up and then let you have some questions, and we can write them out. And I might need Jacqueline or somebody to text me, because I can't see all the time who's writing me on this. You know, if there's a question that somebody asked. Right now I see Doreen's on. I see Kish, I see Daniel, I see Linda, and I'm sorry, I spun around, and I see Jimmy, you, and I might have missed some, and then I see Roger, and tell me if I missed anybody. Keep saying hello, and so Danny, I was praying to the wrong direction. So let me just say this. That last night, I believe that I shared about the time we're in, and I got to remember exactly, but, you know, we have been in a time where I just said it, that, you know, that International House Prayer has been, you know, just sharing that we got 20 more years, and there's a lot of great things. I want to share this, that people aren't just one note, that they have hope in a number of areas, but some I find don't have hope for family. Some don't have hope for business. Some don't have hope for, you know, nations. And so I believe that there's no choice but to be a prisoner of hope. And what is hope? Again, it's an immortal value. It's eternal currency. It's one of the three that will remain. So it's good time to get to know it, because Bob Jones said to me, I was in the prayer room, and he said to me, you know, I was getting claustrophobic. I wanted to get out, and I was reading about the God of all of life, which is everywhere in the scripture. And I had hoped to meet God in all the arenas of life. And we didn't. There's no question we didn't. And we thought business was a platform for evil, politics, everything was outside the church. You know, so I started to have this hope rise up in me, because I had met the God of the first chamber. And this is where it really grips people, and grips people about, you know, our prayer room message is we haven't had that level of intimacy with Jesus and abandonment in our society to the person of Jesus. So when you get a place that they set themselves apart to grow in the knowledge of Him and the love of Him, then that is addictive in a good way. I mean, it's, you get touched by Song of Solomon 1:3, where it says, draw me after you, let me run together with you. You're better than wine, or what makes me merry on the earth. And it says the king opens his chamber door to that one and opens up this realm of friendship and intimacy and redemption. And then that's when the Shulamite woman looks around and says, wow, this is a God that sings over me. This is a God that delights in me. This is a God that's heart skips a beat when he sees me. He's not a God that's distant. He's not a God that doesn't like me. He delights in me, even when I'm making mistakes. And so she passes out. She said, feed me with raisin cakes. But just like the puppy I have likes to sit on my lap, now the puppy likes to, but now getting older, the puppy likes to run around the yard, play with the ball. It's just, that's the first step of love, is this redemptive, fathering, nurturing love. It never goes away. But it was like my son, he used to love to sit on my lap, but then he gets older and he wants to do Song of Solomon 2, where it says, the Lord says, come out into the city with me. See your inheritance. See the wonders of a whole earth that I created as different flavors of me. Not only know the God that's a redeemer, or not only know the God that's a judge, or the king, know the God of creativity, the God that loves to build and create new things and do work, fruitful endeavors. It's the root of the word worship. We all have been given these extraordinary gifts that we're beginning to touch. It says we use 10 to 2% of our minds. It's just this extraordinary creation called human beings. And if it's something we're fearful of, then we never get out of the diapers. And we never get into an earth that's ours. The earth is the Lord's and all that it contains. And ours in love, and ours in servanthood to others. And so you go into Song of Solomon 2, and she said, I don't want to come out of my bedroom. And he's peering through the window, and he said, come out. Then she comes out, and what happens to us when we go into new arenas? We get stretched. She says, watchmen beat me. And that could have meant church watchmen, could have meant watchmen in the city, probably both. It's those who don't understand what you're seeking for tend to get afraid of it and tend to criticize. And that's just, it happens. So, but we bring them along in love. And so when I told Bob Jones, he said to me, he called me up on a shepherd's rod, and he said, this young man is to unbury treasure. And he had a gate and a key and a lock, and it said Isaiah 45, that's been locked up for 6,000 years, and it's the knowledge of the God of hope. And he says, and he will see the whole earth as a seed ground of God's goodness. And I got exploded out of this fear-cloistered reality where I began to love people less because they were different than me, and I started to magnify their sins, versus sometimes it wasn't sins even, it's just irritations versus important. It was just differences, and I identified them that way. And I just thought, that's just, I was going to this heavenly place, and this honestly is difficult. That when you go to a heavenly place and you taste of him, and I had, 5 months in the prayer room, 6 hours a day, and I started to taste of the ages to come, well, it's hard to come back to a harsh earth, harsh human beings, but not if you get the love that you're supposed to ascend, but Jesus said, I ascend and descend. You're supposed to come back, not lose the love, but build in the valley what you saw on the mountain. You don't avoid it and say it's evil and it's going to get more evil and it's just over. No, I'm so glad that the man who led me to the Lord could have said that many times, but love is patient. And so doesn't mean love is patient with nations. So just to extend this God of hope, I started to have my eyesight change. And first I went out and taught at a university. I just left. I was pastor. And people wondered why, because it's a big movement, a lot of influence, but it's a small niche of the whole earth. And I was another ruin. I was just made, some people are, to have a guitar and a prayer alone or a prophecy, but I was to live a life that embraced who God was in hope in all arenas of life and with all people groups in life. And so I went taught at a university. Of course, I was a poor fundamentalist, but then I started to see and step away from the emotions that were coming my way and the interpretation that they had gotten. And I started to study to show myself approved. That means I learned my subject, and I learned it well. And I learned speech and communication, then communication apprehension, the fear of public speaking. It's the second greatest fear to death. And I started to teach those students how to come out of fear and into hope. And I started to qualify the benefits and the outcomes of hope versus hopelessness. And I started to see it in the church. But the church will get afraid to look at itself sometimes. And I don't put down the church. Every organization, whether political, educational, they can have hope and be really leading the way in 10 areas and then have 2 areas where they're 20 years behind or 40 years behind. It's just okay. And we don't have to send them to hell for it. And so we just began to look at the scripture through a lens where it was impossible to see the weight of who Jesus was and is and how he represented himself. Because I did tremendous research just on the nature of Jesus, and I had a class that we broke down the words of Jesus and how many of them were for judgment, how many of them were out of kindness, how many of them were out of hope and provision and healing. And it was stunning. And I started to get this whole greater picture of him. How many were of him being threatened by societies? I mean, he said to the people in the church, he said, they would say, well, what is love? And he said, well, I'll tell you, a heretic goes and helps somebody that falls on the side of the road, and that's love. Heretic. A Samaritan was a heretic. And you think, man, they say, a gay person picks somebody up, that's love. Well, it starts to challenge you. God is not challenged by that. God's not challenged by it. God is looking at hearts. And he has hope for hearts. And I thank God that years ago, he started to have me when I'd start to prophesy, and I would be judging because I was working on the docks and there were hard characters and they were being mean to their wives. And I'd start to prophesy about, you've been with 3 women, you're with another, and your wife, you don't treat her like a princess. And all of a sudden the Lord speaks to me and said, don't you speak to him like that. His name was Carl. And she said, the Lord said, I have hope in him. You're disqualifying him. You're identifying his sin, which he already knows. And he said, identify the hope for him. And so he shouted out on the docks when I was doing this, and he said, everything he said is true. Well, you think, great, go tell that as testimony. I got another one, but it was, I felt like crud. I just had put a person down in a crushing way, and they thought it was from God's voice when he was telling me be kind. And so I look for the original design, look for love and hope for this person. And all of a sudden I start to have a vision of who they are according to God's design. And I see them leading marriages. Well, this is the last one I'd want leading marriages in the natural. and doing this wondrous way of bringing husband and wife together to delight in each other. And I start to speak it to him, and I'm about to cry, and he nods. He can't pull himself together. He's just awed that I would love him in that state. And I see him 3 years later in a Christian bookstore. I don't see him after that on the job. And I walk up behind him, and he's in the marriage row, and I said, Carl, and he turned around, and he looked beautiful. His eyes were full, and his wife came around the corner, said, I'd love you to meet Bob. And I said, he's the one that spoke to me about what we've become, honey. And he said, I just want to thank you what we've become. And she thanked me. And I couldn't get myself together. But after that, I said, I'm always going to look for the solution, which is love, one step farther in the way I hear about people or the way I hear about nations. When he told me in 1983, you're going to see faithful France come forth. Well, I got no faith for France. They're passionate people. There's some redeeming circumstances, but then he opens up to me things I don't know. So Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was written by who? She has 114, Bob Fraser shared this at the church tonight, 114 depositions, people that were witnesses about her, and she saved France. And we were having trouble with the French. But who writes about her? Not another French person. Mark Twain writes about her. Because he knows that we can identify with the flavor in a nation. It's edifying if he paints it that way. And we got to look for the flavors of a nation that we can esteem and point to. And when you point to original design, all of evil, all that goes away. I mean, Mike Bickle's done it to me so many times. But just with the world or other things, I could just say, there's it. So I want to say that socially accepted drugs are hate, which is apathy. That means not giving a darn about people groups. It's until we love them, we won't have a voice for them. And then the socially accepted drug is hopelessness, or you just have hopelessness for a group. And so, I shot at it. I saw her. The 20 years just was over the last week. They shared it at least this is what's been told to me by a few, because I don't want to do this. I want to make sure that I know. But so Michael Wong is on here really. I've just been in private and public in a lot of settings with a lot of people that have believed for apocalyptic devastation, and that there's going to be the great falling away. And how is that measured? And what does that look like? We need the wisdom of God. And I'm just appealing this way. One, that the eternal values or eternal currency, one of them is hope. And that's expecting the goodness of God a very long ways out. Now and a very long ways out. There's 27 temporal hopes or promises for family, for legacy, inheritance, etc., that business that we could point out. And those are to be reached for and believed in, even when the picture doesn't look that good. And so we trust. It's like our brothers who trusted for healing years ago. Well, it didn't look too good. Now healing's happening a lot. Well, it won't be long before nations coming to him will be believed for. But if you have a people that don't expect it, and the social accepted drug is conspiracy and evil, and it is, that's true, but it's nothing compared to the greatness of God and what he's doing. And so that's what's to be magnified. He says, magnify me, your face will be radiant, the land will be yours. You'll inherit the land, you'll have no shame in you. So it doesn't say okay, well, nothing's going to happen, but that's a good posture. It's hope and love. No, it says you'll get 27 temporal hopes. So just the point is we have potentially been duped where we have a great inheritance. So like to me, I moved out at 15 and I was scared to death. And my dad said to me, Bobby, you're one of the smartest young men I know. He said, you're most intuitive, creative, and whether I was or not, but he said, a monkey could make money in this economy. And it just changed everything. I thought, that's not a scary world. I can do this. And there was hope everywhere. And so I started to believe for hope for the older generation that they would want to mentor me if I was attractive and kind and humble and worked hard. And so it changed my destiny. And then I got into a place where I was pastor and we didn't make much money and we became wards of the church where people weren't like free about money. They just expect the church to give them food, clothing, and shelter. And it was like a senior's home, you know, and getting their glasses in there. And then you're a ward, you're afraid all the time, afraid to leave your position, versus God put in us to create wealth. And so I was 39, and my wife, her teeth, I can't fix them. Cars broken down, flat tire, and it's just the way you lived, you know. And I walked up to the window and I said, I am not a pauper. I'm a king, and I'm to create wealth for the good of others. And so it exploded from that point. My expectations changed. I didn't think it was evil anymore. I thought it was awesome to create resources for the good of others. And so you have these whole mind shifts, which our mind has to be engaged in the renewed mind for us to be able to see on those levels. Like we don't expect to have a voice perhaps to different people. And so so we don't have that hope that if we speak to them, not just preach to them, but we bring the heart of God and we open up who Jesus is, that they'll really want him. And I know that everybody, if they really get a picture of him, will want him, unless they're at a place in their lives with a pain or whatever. But more want him that I've talked to than don't want him. The most private area of my life that I've lived out of the most is what you would call evangelism. But I call it just being one that has been sent to find, like Jesus, the apostles. I'm searching for the hope reformers, and I don't care where they're at now. The Lord will show me to them, and then I'll ask for my angel of attraction to go out and bring them, because my health, and within a week or 2 weeks, I'll hear from them most often. And friends like Danny, others can tell you it's happened thousands of times. And so, but that's not everybody's call. But I'd love to tell you some that seem like in the darkest places of evil, the encounters we've had and the things that have changed. And I always say, don't talk about me. I know I go to my head. I know I just need to be somebody who loves Jesus. And I'll say, let me be the poor, wise one in wisdom, rest in the heart and is filled with hope. That helps save a city and nobody remembers their name. Let them like me, but let me not get my head too big. And so, because you get your head too big or you let others get your head too big, and it gets cut off, whether you do it to yourself or whether you allow others to do it. And sometimes it's not stopping others. So I'm more cautious about what I say where. But one I've talked about, expanded view of God as the God of hope. And I've talked about hopelessness being the socially accepted drug towards people groups, towards business, towards families. And I don't care what it looks like. I would say our lack of hope is help feed it. Because hope is a seed bread And then faith comes in. And what does it say that faith, what happens? Be it done to you according to your faith. We got to have that hope for that faith to land in, which is expecting good. Everywhere you get up and you say, what's the adventure today? Christmas time for the kids. So now the Lord is opening up. In 2019, I saw a mushroom cloud. It came over the earth that was dark, and it was a blanket of like Auschwitz. People look like Auschwitz victims in all these different areas because they're drinking of this hopelessness and depression, and that was okay. And being commiserate friends, just focusing on the misery versus being marvelous comrades and saying, no, we're focusing on love and advancing and get your heart healed. If it needs to be, then God is able to heal it. We're going to get stronger in love. And it is the worst of all drugs. Fornication isn't, I'm not going to say fornication is a representation of Christ in the bed. So it's a high place, right? Or adultery, those things are not good. Men kiss men, not good. All that kind of stuff. But we have decided on sometimes lesser evils. I would propose to you that a lot of this real bizarre behavior, unique behavior, is like the Renaissance, where people in these costumes, they were trying to find their original design. So 2019, there's a blanket of a pandemic, and there's a blanket that blankets and separates people because they got to hide in their homes, and so they get more and more distant from one another, and they're just shooting bombs of social media versus being eye to eye and loving each other. And you can't know a person unless you touch them. You got to touch them. You got to hug them. You got to hold them. You got to look at them. And so we allow this little shift in time to not be what it could have been. It was a time where social media was to be redeemed, and communities were to be built in a sense of belonging across the nations. I dreamed about social media back before many, many years ago. It was tin cans with a string to friends for many years, and it was a love tool. And so we have to have hope that it's a love tool. But a lot of times the enemy has that quick, intense power up front, and then he runs out. And so we say, we keep advancing it as a love tool. We don't so react to those that are using it this way or that way. You don't get alarmed by your opponent. It means destruction for them. The more you get alarmed, the more you're in the battle room, and it just empowers the enemy. So the Lord is opening up. In this time, there was a pandemic, and that could have been a beautiful Sabbath. Nobody wants everybody to be sick or people to be dying, obviously. But the earth needed a Sabbath. And that was a place where we could have started the ascension times. There was another level of prayer the Lord wanted to give us, where I had been an adorer of him, but just with my health, it was proclaiming who he was, but not listening as much as I should. And when you ascend, you sit at a table with him. He shows you his table, and there's different tables, a table of wisdom, there's a table of counsel, there's tables where he takes you and he begins to engage with you. The table of showbread, it's called. And so we had a year where we could spend a lot of time at that table and that table with one another, and ascend and walk into a whole different level of spiritual tools from the third heavens that would fight and win in the second heavens. And I'm not saying it's over, and I'm not saying people did bad. I just think sometimes men and women of Issachar will get distracted by some things, and that's where we need to see how is every stage of our life an invitation into intimacy versus an invitation into pain and carnality. And so that's the commandment. Proclaim his love in the morning and his faithfulness to that love by night. So now we're into 2021. And now we're seeing the curtain pulled back on political situations that have always been there. But we it's like I didn't want the children to hear my wife and I fight because they're not prepared to hear that. And honestly, we just didn't have that many because she was very private. But, we're a business. We'd have things that we'd lose $300,000. I want the staff to hear that. I want them to be secure, stable. So the point is, we heard things in the political realm that caused, there was a level of maturity that I was being shook. And I'm not acting like I'm the most mature, but I could tell I was getting reactive. I was getting outraged, and love was secondary. And you got to know enough to know, like Moses, I won't go without your presence. If I'm not in the presence or I'm not in love, then don't go there. Don't try to answer a question that's a wrong one that should have never been asked. If you would have been in that place of love and hope, you wouldn't ask that question, possibly. And I'm talking to me. But let's just get back to just the reality of just the hopes that God has for us. That there's a hope for a revealing of God. He told me that all I did was spend hours a day adoring Him. But He told me at this table, 1% of me that I want you to know of me in this lifetime. I'll tell you, the mind of Him and the wisdom of Him and my mind just syncing up with that. Not all the fruit is showing yet, but I'm giving myself to the sweet stick. The sweet stick is in Exodus 15. It's what I came out of the pandemic with, was this visitation of the Lord, that out of this mushroom cloud that was trying to blanket the earth for bad would become these Jesus, and then He would have a platter full of greater tools, weapons in His love. And so it's Jeremiah 50:51. It says, when the devil rises up with a new arsenal, many adversaries stand at the door, but there's a wide open door for ministry and greater things. So we don't get lost by the adversaries, but we get the greater tools and we go in. And so He showed me a number of greater tools, and I'm totally confident. And I found them in the scripture, but the one that I'm speaking to that we're each to get is a sweet stick. And the sweet stick is our most powerful, wisest tool. And the sweet stick is out of Exodus 15, 23 through 26, and it's where they came on the waters of Meribah, and Moses threw the log in those bitter, bitter waters, and all of it became sweet. He is giving us that supernatural power to take bitter, bitter situations and people and to bring them forth in a sweet place. And cities and nations. And we can't underestimate the sweet stick He's given us. And one thing I'm to do in this time, start crowning people with their sweet sticks. It's like Aaron's rod of that authority. So I'm to describe the first sweet stick was one I called really new encounter pathway in Him, but I called it new prayer. But really, honestly, it was the new mind, because it was a place of communication with God. There's 14 compartments of the mind and the heart that roll together, and there's such a power in the renewed, loving mind. There's power to hope. There's power to see with an intellect that it's not a negative thing, to have the ability to see the chessboard of all the ages and all the nations, and it to become easy. Einsteins will be low intelligent people in the days to come, because love will extend our capacity and our understanding of what He wants to give us. So this sweet stick of this compassionate, hopeful, wisdom mind, like Solomon got with the splitting of the baby. And I can describe what kind of wisdom there was in that. Wisdom rests in the heart of God. There's much we can say about wisdom in the mind and the intelligence of the mind. And how many people are saying we are not answering the deeper questions of identity crisis with original design. And so what I saw coming with this next generation is they would be like the fish on the bottom of the sea that see in 32 primary colors. And so they're attuned to a whole lot of things that me, as a put your head down, plow through guy, to build a business, warrior like David, to build and war, saw 4 primary colors. And my son would be I remember taking him to work and how much he observed about the different people and their work or their work patterns or their attitudes and their hearts and how I could deal with them. His attunement to their temperaments, things that was way beyond me. And his attunement to build a blue city and a redeemable city. And then when he started to bring those things up in our church setting, he was flogged, and I'm not saying that he asked some wrong questions at the wrong time, but I'm not afraid of that. I'd rather, it's just what kindness looked like and asking questions about those kinds of things, and what a caring city looked like. And so we are going to grow into, and I'm going to suggest sources that will develop us in the sweet stick of a love that's expanded and can see it doesn't get offended. And I'll give an example. Well, you know what? I'm going to stop, let you ask questions, but I just want you to know that different ones that I can see some names here are ones that I saw with the sweet stick, and there are hope ambassadors, and that is those who are hope centers, living hope centers. They have the 5 agreements of hope. That means you made that choice. I'm going to hope in God. I'm going to hope in people. I'm going to hope in God in his ability to lead people over the devil's ability to deceive them. I'm going to hope in the next generation, I'm going to hope in prayer, and I'm hoping cities and nations. And it's hoping in God in these areas. But those are what I hope ambassadors are. And we're going to get more of our training on the web page. We just need administrative help. And I used to have a large team, and I don't. And so I just got to pace it. We've had people offer, but even managing the process is more than I'm just trying to finish out on business. So we are going to talk to each other on Friday, Saturday nights, or Sunday. And then we're going to have ascended prayers that we're posting in the morning, and then at night decrees. And follow our webpage, The Yellow House Journey, which I say everybody goes through the same rooms together in their life. And that's, I don't want to get into too many subjects. So tell me, I'll finish with this, okay? And then answering questions is, I am a prophet to the willing and to the wounded, but to those who are ready to be built, I always am one who wants to pull a thorn out of the paw of the lions, you. And then I will have a grid that I see people through. There are different kinds of hope ambassadors. There's different kinds of hope centers to be built by you as an individual and in your family, others. And there's different kinds of gift mix and essence you have. So I have a grid, and we're doing it right now with a subscription group where they subscribe. And since there's time and the money that I pay people to help organize it, we do ask for a donation or charge for it. And we're behind on getting that to people, which is upsetting to me because we've done the work and got the history of what we're taking people through a development program as Hope Ambassadors. And there's not many human development centers or godly development centers that develop you for all the arenas of life, not just for ministry. And so, but the bugs at first where I paid somebody a big chunk of money to organize it and to get it out, and then I find that that didn't happen. So we still have the originals where we did the sound files, and now with the subscription people, if you're one of them or if you can tell the others, we're going to do it in person. We're going to have the phone calls and pray for the people. And it's more than pray. We prepped them, and we're going to just prophetically build you. And so if you want to do that, there's a limit of the people that we can do that with. But I will also mention to some people here on the call, I'll give a spark and I'll say, if I saw you in a dream, or maybe somebody you know, and just how they got the sweet stick and what kind of sweet stick it is, and maybe a challenge to them. Right now what I'm dreaming about, and I can't milk it all out, is I'm dreaming about people that had in the ages that have been before, but they're even present people. I started to share some with Danny, and Danny's on here. So Danny's writing about one where I had a dream about those who would have this greater than sweet stick of divine wisdom in compassion, and they change a community or they change a people group. And so I started to call out those names that I had from the dream. And what I didn't tell Danny is some of you, I usually have a dream that it'll be about like one who I didn't mention to Danny, and that I write this list. Hey, puppy, I hear you. No, I'll take care of you in a minute. I love you, puppy. So we're getting a strong bark. So, gosh, I dreamed about, and this one I haven't even, Mary Johnson. And I haven't looked this one up. And OSHEA. And this one, I just dreamed of these ones that had compassion for someone that had done them wrong. And when others saw it, it pulled out their desire for revenge. And there are in the next few weeks, the enemy and some splinter groups have planned international incidents to magnify the distance between political parties and people groups. And we need the compassionate, wise ones to step in there and be able to do what they need to do in this situation. And so there's some I'm privately going to talk to. And, there was a couple of people I told last night more specifically about it. But we can sometimes be in some of these, pettier issues, and there's a real enemy that wants to package something on the right, on the left, on the church, on this, and that, where it causes there to be war. And so now here, like I said, I love my brothers and sisters, and I help her wherever, and I believe they're seeing some things, but I believe that, and they probably would, that there's a greater grace and toward it. So I don't know much I can say, but Mary Johnson and OSHEA, if somebody could look it up, I might be able to identify the person. But Danny's bringing something up that I want to identify with somebody. Is I said to Danny this morning, I saw the sweet stick in the hands of the West Nile people. And then after a while, I read it in my handwriting at night. I said the West Nichols people. And I just about started to cry. I said there was death of children. And I didn't know the rest of the story. And I said that there was an Abigail kind of love, which Abigail averted an international incident by speaking to David's original design, saying, don't die on this petty mountain, and by being generous to him. Now, she also called her husband out as somebody that just wants to start battles. And I believe she did it out of love. You know, I mean, it's like I can disagree with some friends here on this. I love them. And that's the only way I can publicly is if I love them with all my heart, you know, and I'm just hoping, you know, so Danny looked it up and he said the West Nichols people were an Amish group. And there was a man that came in, I think he told me the name of the man, and killed, I think, 8 or 9 children. And then they forgave the man and as a group and helped the family the way I understood it. And that cultivated compassion and the wisdom of it that the Amish people weren't understood in that area. And there was anger because they were the righteous, you know, judgmental people. But it opened the door for understanding and for love. And there's been 2 incidents since then that I dreamed about that they were able to avert destruction in that community and other communities because they were trusted in their love. And so I saw a few of you being positioned to be able to bring forgiveness for those that might not have taken the life of somebody you know. It doesn't have to be that extreme. But you know, show a different kind of love to those who have been hurtful towards you and towards your family. And they didn't mean it. You know, they didn't understand what they were doing. And so I'll get more specific. But Keith Johnson said, somebody's writing, Jimmy Yoon is writing, Keith Johnson's writing about the West Nichols people, that they were, what is it? I lost it, gosh. Part of an Amish community in Pennsylvania. Well, let me tell you that just from the time I talked to Danny earlier today, I talked to, you know, really the number 1 coach in wrestling is from Penn State. And so, and I'm in that world, and, you know, so I can't get into too many things right now, but I know that his own wrestlers changed and they proclaiming the love of Christ. I mean, I've never seen as many wrestlers and world-class wrestlers giving glory to God. And there was seed here and some people that came from that community that he had speak to him. Because wrestling in the past has been like WWE. I mean, we just wanted to beat each other up and be the baddest. And now it's just changing the nature of the sport. Now they're being sent to Tokyo, and God has opened up some things for them in Tokyo. And my friend is one of the assistant coaches. He was the coach of the Olympic team. And there's possibility to be there, and there's something that needs to happen with the Japanese people in love and compassion to build that bridge with us for the days to come. And there's also something that happens when, and I want to speak to another one of you, is when we allow ourselves to look at our nation as evil, just purely evil, then you curse it. And the fact is, we're the most generous nation on the earth. And I've lived in a number of other nations. So I see people open their pocketbook where it's not a question, and I'm not going to state the countries, but also we're people that hope a lot. We're people with an entrepreneurial, pioneering spirit that's not afraid to move forward and build and do good for others. And, and there's many other things to say about our nation. It's been an inclusive nation. It's cared for different immigrants and people. And so when they say America's done and going to hell, then we don't want to curse a nation that's the most sending nation in the world too for the gospel. All that ceases then. Jimmy Yoon is telling me about Mary forgave OSHA for killing her son after 11 years. So OSHA Israel, the Forgiveness Project. So the original design, well, I guess this is one of those things to have a conversation about, because the picture I got of Mary was, she was older. Was she African American or black? Somebody tell me. But she would make forgiveness look different. And I'm going to end up talking to Mary, or one of you will, because she gave great love or forgiveness. And now the Lord's going to show her another level of forgiveness. Forgiveness will be extinct because we'll live out of appreciation. And then you can't be offended because you don't have expectations. And you live out of appreciation, and you've made a decision to hope in people. And if they make a mistake and they kill somebody, that doesn't stop love. Doesn't stop the value on a human being. And so I'm not saying I'd be not okay, so she is an African American woman. Well, she's going to help build a bridge between, and it'll be her next step, and build a bridge between the young and the old. And I don't know who killed her son, but the young and the old, and she'll be a matriarch that's beyond color. And she'll say, and she'll help us to attune to what's called the millennial generation. And I believe there's something that's being said that's bigger than what the millennials are being given credit for. But I believe Ann Cooper is to pray and ask how she is to, see the original design, allow the Lord to help her with ascension. And I'm going to send her, and if any of you are talking to her, I'm going to send her to somebody that I believe that just would help her with her unique love gift, with wisdom, and with a refined divine mind that will be prepared to bring the generations closer together in a very unique, distinct way. So, but so I saw Anne with the sweet stick of the Mary Johnson. So I think there might be even, writing her and asking her, finding out about her history, and then asking her questions of love. So there's one. Hey, you're right below my feet, buddy. So any questions, comments? Is Ann on here? I don't see. I'm only seeing about 4 people, but it'll come up. It's just weird. Um, so yeah, Ann just came out. So Ann, I don't know if you've been on, but I just spoke to something here about you. So there was last night the dream of the sweet stick that turns bitter into sweet. And it was through this compassionate divine mind that could see the variables, why somebody had done what they did and how it can be redeemed to touch many more. And they just don't get lost in the pain of the event that they experienced. Was an Eric Fitzgerald for Matthew. And I did share that with Danny, that Eric Fitzgerald got the sweet stick for Matthew, but it spoke to a higher level of love. And so Danny responded, looked it up, and he said that Matthew fell asleep and was a paramedic and killed the friends of Eric Fitzgerald, or killed his daughter, I believe, maybe his wife. But Eric actually pursued him to treat him as a friend. And so I saw ones here that would pursue people. And I just want to tell you, I'm in the midst of pursuing someone. I was a leader of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, a number of years ago. We had a pole vaulter that was from about 60 miles from here. He did it in his backyard with a trailer and his dad in overalls, and it was just the weirdest thing to walk and see his long hair, and he was jumping behind this trailer right by a lake. I mean, it's really low rent area, and he's jumping over 18 feet into this little styrofoam deal. And he's on our Olympic team, but he's close to a man that was on the Olympic team. And when this man has had a real difficult time with identity. And so I had a conversation with this man about 2 months ago, because that pole vaulter called me after years and said, hey, I'm in touch with this person. This person's kind of known. And so I took to this person that was like my father in this way. My father became an inner city principal, and we lived in the inner city because he wanted to attune and taste, touch, and feel what that impoverished group felt. And so there's ones that are out there that identify with the disenfranchised. They identify with the people that are put down. Sometimes they've been put down themselves, and this one had been put down by the family it was part of and treated like nothing. And so you see in the Renaissance, people wear the weird costumes, do these weird things because they don't have the design of God's mind to see the beauty in their original design. And they think it's cookie cutter to be a Christian. And so I had been invited to talk to this person, but I just had seen this person in a light that they were aggressive, and just and the short of it is, the Lord started to give me love for the individual and the reason to talk to this one. And this one has been on YouTube and cried about whether they make it to heaven or not. So my point with this is that they're asking the right questions. And but I don't want to say more than that. But Eric knew that if he could show love for this individual, not only that, friendship, that it could save this one's heart. And this one's heart was potentially going to become like the Virginia Tech young man who I met before he killed all the people. And I didn't have the divine wisdom or mind or the heart to reflect Jesus enough. And I know that's okay. I wasn't ready at that time, but that because I was so thrown off by the way he was attacking his family. Jimmy Unit was around the people, Q and somebody else was in the McDonald's when I met him. But now I would be intimidated by his level of, just hurt and hatred. And so I just want to say, Jimmy Unit, there's ones that you're going to love that and treat as friends that they haven't killed you or haven't killed anybody in your family, but they killed what you loved, and they didn't understand what you loved, and they didn't appreciate enough, just the value of who you were, and so it felt like it killed something within you. But your ability to show them friendship, and you'd be beyond it by getting the grace to understand your identity and not let it be moved by the hurt. It's like when my wife wanted a divorce, I'm just real honest. I mean, I was seeing her through a broken mirror. She didn't see my identity. She didn't have hope for me. That was my feeling, and I couldn't treat her like a friend, and it's a different reality, but all I have is, love and desire for her success. And people have seen that, and when they've seen that and know some of the circumstances, they think, man, that's awesome. Or if they see that from her, it just gives them hope that God can take broken relationships to that level and restore love. And it's a different kind of love, obviously. So Eric Fitzgerald, Jimmy Yoon. So just please ask the Lord more, because in this public setting, I just I'm gonna be careful on what I say. I saw it was a place, and it was a building that got a sweet stick. I couldn't make the building out. I could make out what was written on it, and it was a manual, and then it was AF. I couldn't see the rest of it. Methodist. So, but what it was that I saw, and I don't think I said this one to Danny this morning, was they got the sweet stick of compassionate wisdom, and it was for someone, and I'm having to remember, you guys, but it was in my notes or somewhere. But these are like places people walked into this divine wisdom, love that will radiate across the nations, be used as an example. And I can use I can give you examples from history where love spoke and the wisdom of hope for one another in really painful situations that brought nations together, brought people groups together. And that's what God's released it as the peacemakers, but they're filled with this love that overcomes. And it's a divine wisdom love that sees how to give it and what measures and how long and how not to get affected. So this group was prepared to demonstrate a love, and it was a love to somebody who purposed evil. There was somebody named Dylan, somebody named Apple, Lance, Tyanca. Does anybody know Emmanuel AF Methodist? Something that it might be African Methodist. Please, if anybody gets that, but because there's a leader of a group here of the people that are churched and unchurched, and then the love, they had to unplug from the church for a while to just, it's like you're a teenager, you grow up. It's like when I ran a business, a business is likened unto with this Yugoslavian PhD, a young person growing up. As a baby and a toddler, they want to be with you, but it's like my general manager wanted to run his own business after a while. He was a teenager that had grown up, and he's, and he needed to have his room and space. And I just took pictures of his truck, Hartley's, out there cleaning carpets. I hadn't seen it for a while, and different ones of his trucks. So, but, so the unchurched ones that will reach back to the church and bring the water level of wisdom and love up. The unchurched one, Gunner, is that you? I think it's Gunner. And Emmanuel African Methodist. Jacqueline, tell us about it. Another shooting in Charleston, Keish says. And can you tell us a little more? I'm so sorry. Gunner's here. Gunner, just, you're going to lead people that are going to be a community. And I'll need to say more to you privately, but that your goal is going to be to love those that might look like the KKK. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not. It's just, so who did the shooting? Jeremy Wood. I can see the end of this. Who did the shooting? And Gunner, you had a podcast called Unchurching. Christianity without churchianity. So Dylan was the shooter, I said, okay. Was it an African American church? It says African, so I would think, I don't know. But just, and I don't know, it was a white individual that was the shooter. Let me just tell you this, that Gunner, I'm going to ask you to ask the Lord about it. Keeps telling us, okay. So what I saw was the church forgave the person or the family of the person, and I believe that the church was going to bring understanding that they weren't the enemy. They weren't, and so I believe you're going to bring the church and the unchurched together that have seen themselves as enemies. And it's Hatfields versus the McCoys, and it's in the area where new songs are going to come forth of hope and the divine mind, compassion mind. So you're from Portland, but I see the Nashville singers, and I see, small churches out there that are going to come into a greater place of freedom to love. And freedom, they'll be afraid that they won't be accepted if they're seen with certain types of people, and you're going to break down those barriers. So that's as much as I'm going to say. Um, so the sweet stick of divine wisdom, there's a wisdom mind and compassionate mind. There's a fact that says if a person needs to be hugged like 3 times a day for at least 5 seconds. And so you think, how can you measure that? But it just makes sense. People need to be touched, and a hug is warmth. And so I dreamed about the person that had the wisdom of the hug, and the person's name was Botham. And I said that to Danny as he was leaving, and he wasn't able to look it up. But Botham, the Botham hug, the Botham embrace. And there was an amber light around this one. And so there was one of you that would have this embrace, that would embrace something that had been difficult, and the embrace would melt the other person. I can remember with John Wimber, there was a man, we're standing there, and this man is really threatening him and so angry. And John steps forward, and John had, what are they called, bodyguards and this and that, and could have turned around and walked away and held him. And they both started to laugh together. And John was looking at me, and he said, he's going through healing. He was just, that laughter was healing. And he said, her healing, and he just mouthed it to me. And then John started crying, the man started to cry. And it just, that hug melted everything, because there was so much behind it. They identified and he attuned with him. And love can be simple but deep. So, anybody look at the Botham, Botham. And there were many more last night that were in this dream that were the ones that stunned me. Jimmy, I'm going to tell you, there was one for Rana, that the Ranas are going to be healed. And Jimmy and I know what that means, and that just made me cry, because Rana got stuck in the second heavens. So just write that down. Don't say much about it. And I hope Jimmy's still on here. But has anybody found the Botham? Sometimes I'll hear it, maybe not spell it right. Botham, or I got Doreen. I think I said Doreen. What did you say, Doreen? It was about Doreen. Hug the woman who shot his brother or her brother. Brother hugged the woman who shot his brother. Wow. Was her name Amber? Yeah, Jimmy Warana. So there's going to be divine wisdom love that brings Rana out from that bed. Oh, Officer Amber mistakenly shot Botham. Brand hugged her. Gosh. I don't know how I don't know about these things. I think I heard about a woman, a policewoman, shooting, or somebody shooting a person by accident, but I didn't know their names. But there's one of you that are going to hug some police that really have made some mistakes, and that's why it's in the atmosphere for people to love the police, but also to be reticent. I want to be honest with you. I got beat up 3 times by police, and I'm for police, but it was I was a pastor one time, 40 years old. I'm driving home. I cleaned carpets all night. And this man, he ended up getting let go from the force, but I argued with him, and then it led to him getting me into the jail, and then trying to pull my hair out and stuff like that. And I don't want to get into it, but I've been in those situations where it's, like I was as a lifeguard, I got a whistle. I usually whistle, but there has been not a check and balance system in some situations, and some of the ones that have gotten hurt and gotten on the wrong side as policemen, they're going to be hugged by one of you, and they're going to be believed in with understanding. So Kish, I ask you to ask the Lord about that, and I'll give you more understanding on that. And the Lord said, there was, just said the amber light came forward, and I saw an amber light. So that's what I asked. The name was an amber because I could feel it was a person's light that got reinvigorated because this one held her. And it deflected a lot of the judgment that would ruin this one's life. But there's more to come to this one. And I think this one had made mistakes. And so this one knows that. So Keisha, you might ask the Lord if you're to write this one with some wisdom, love. So, there's more. I think it's time to stop for tonight. I just think, I believe I saw Jeremy, his name up here. So, Jeremy, there was, I'm just feeling a check to go into it. Is Jeremy here? Okay, Jeremy. Yeah, I can see at the bottom if people just signed up. Like I see Ryan, Pamela. Jeremy, I just saw a picture of some young marriages. Jimmy will know what I'm talking about here, but we know a young lady that was church secretary and just very special, but very sensitive, very tender, and got married. And sometimes when you get married and somebody has allowed themselves to spend time in the second heavens, that means it's a demonic realm. It's a place where they got fears and doubts and questions that are just over the top. You can go there with them by mistake. And it's just like, I was around a believer that was starting to dabble with satanic stuff and asking me questions that were out of bounds, dividing the Trinity, trying to get powers in ways that, and so I just told them there was about 40 of us, and this one was doing drugs to enhance their experience, and I didn't know that, but I just redirected conversations. We're out of bounds, and this one lost it mentally. They were in the second heavens, and they were asking questions that you would ask in the second heavens, and they're all caught up in the warfare, and so they went off the deep end for a while, and I didn't go with them, didn't go with those questions, and then, I was able, about 6 months later, this one was sleeping at his grandmother's, and I was able to go in the door. His grandmother called me, and he was ready to come back. So, but there's some that have given themselves in this generation, and it happens that they ask the wrong questions at the wrong time, and they'll take a fragile person with them or sensitive person, and they'll get stuck, and it'll cause them to go comatose. So there's a breaking of that power, and it's through love. And my mom, I use that. My mom was a brilliant woman and started to ask questions. Her mother every morning would call her and tell her how bad she was for an hour every morning. That was just kind of that generation, and she snapped, my mom, and was bedridden and just would kind of giggle and take heavy, hard drugs. And she just got stuck in the second heavens where she believed the devil's opinion of her through my grandmother. And so, but she also was mean. So I said, Dad, why don't you leave her? I didn't have that understanding of love. Because she's mean to us. And he said, Bobby, I made a decision to love her till she dies, not just be married to her. And he said, well, I'm going to stick with that decision. And he said, she's in pain, mentally, emotionally, physically. And so he just loved her, held her hand. And one night she was miraculously healed and treated him like a princess to a prince, for the rest of their days. And he had loved his way through, and it was miraculous. I'm so honored to have a father that loved somebody through that darkness. And so I just sharing with a few of you, and it was Jeremy, about loving someone who's been affected by the darkness, that will come out and they'll be okay. And so, and I could say their name, but I just ask you to ask the Lord, and I want Chad to pray about this. I just say, I met a pastor, I met a son, and the son had been a baseball player, like he was going to be the outstanding baseball player in the nation at a college level. His brother ended up a pitcher at Stanford winning it. But his brother was a lover of the Lord, walked out of left field, was the best hitter and all that. And during the game, dropped his glove, went over the hill, and just kept walking, and has been out of his, lost out of his mind since then. But when I come to the church, I come often, I just get with him. And whether it made any sense or not, I just loved him like he did. And he started to come to the church, and he started to get his mind back. And then I sicked some people on him. And he's gone up and down, and I'm ready to, initiate again. But those are the ones that can get some thoughts that can be very destructive. And so, and Chad and Shauna, you're going to have an anointing for those ones that have gotten destructive thoughts towards the family, for them to see the beauty of belonging, the beauty of community, the love of different expressions of people. And I just even want to write it out for you, what the gift of family looks like, Like Linda Everline, she's got a incredible gift about the understanding of family and the love of family. And so she's helped me a lot with mine. So I just think you guys are going to have an ability to love those that their minds got challenged, like the Me Too movement, where men are not good, and but there's extremes out there where it's actually demonic affliction, stealing their inheritance. And I can tell you who, because you're designed for family, but it's to a degree where you got the supernatural wisdom of God on what's coming against it and what it's saying to people, and they're questioning without even asking where the questions come from. So I love you all. I gotta be done. I'm running out of gas. Tell me if you'd like to have times like this where we can maybe have a way where we can talk. And I'm just going to continue on the sweet stick. And, I have a number of people that got the sweet sticks last night. And I got another number of people that reflected that sweet stick of compassionate love. I saw Pamela, and Ryan and Pamela. Earlier I said that I don't know, if your name goes up the thing. And Doreen, there is just something going on in Cuba right now. If you put on YouTube, the Cuba protest. And I asked you guys to pray because they're to be brothers. They're that close, that we're a strange family, and there's an international incident that's in the works with Cuba that wouldn't be good. And I believe you have to write somebody. Brett Ingles, you do. And I need to talk to you tomorrow about your manifestation of the sweet stick. But Ryan and Pamela, there's someone named Marion that will have a great influence into this conflict that's happening in Cuba. And anytime you protest, I've been many times Cuba for quite a while there. And there's an original design that the people are starting to see, but the government's ready to put it down, and government feels like the people have been betrayers. There's something in China that, I just don't have much to say tonight about, but we're going to be able to come in there with the wisdom, love, the kids' enemies to come together in peace, and our nations be looking on the verge of falling apart to a great love. And then it'll be like, whatever happened there? So Danny knows who Marion is. I spoke to Danny and I said, there's a Marion that has a message of reconciliation for the Communist Party of Cuba and for the people. And so then I think there's somebody in particular to get that message there and to the right people. So, Danny, if you're on there, or Jacqueline, maybe you could just write to Danny, or Linda knows how, if Linda's on, just write to them. Doreen, I said, and Ryan and Pamela. Doreen, we got a place for you. So, part of this String of Pearls team, giving pearls and the flower to one with the individual prophetic, and we're going to be giving people their sweet sticks this time together. But just ask Danny who Marion is. And Marion, I saw touching an Adrian Fernandez, and just ask the Lord for a little poem, a poem of love that would build the bridge. And you'll find poems in different places, Ryan, like you'll find, I had a dream about, and I often do, about what's the song of the ages right now. What's a song that is a song of the nations right now? And I had the Bee Gees, Staying Alive. And I was on this call with this group that we ascend together. We go into the heavenlies and we just ask the Lord for things. But a woman said, I dreamed about it in that song, and it was pulled out of a record album. She had asked them for the most important song for this hour, and they pulled that one out, and so I had said it. And so everybody on the call thinking, Bee Gees staying alive. And then somebody looked up the words to it. And part of the words and lyrics, and I encourage you to look at it, it says, and I'm as best I can remember, but the New York Times plan for man that they will destroy you if they can. But I put on heaven's shoes, and on wings of angels I cannot lose. And so they were talking about a love that gets you above that, and she's from a different place. And it goes on, and it speaks to the hour we're in. And so sometimes there's just a short poem or just some lyrics of a song, because there's a song of Cuba that's going to be coming forth now. So I haven't looked about it or anything, but if any of you, understand what you do, divine sophistication, he will give you seeds like this, and then you'll go and you'll find they're writing a song right now, and it's a new song for their nation, and you're going to give them a few lyrics to it. And I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying I got enough instincts from the past to know there's more to it. So Lord Jesus, thank you for the families, Chad, Shauna, that have had some real, what feels like dark oppressors from the second heavens. But just say it's nothing. Your love and your wisdom that thwarts everything, that takes uninhabited territories. David conquered lands, but there were just lands. Then Solomon in one generation had a kingdom that was the wisest, greatest, with all the gardens and all the beauty. So Lord, we just say yes to them bringing forth families of original design that will be the strength to the earth, be the builders to the earth. But I just ask you for these other ones. I feel so tender, the sweet sticks of divine wisdom, that you will give them just that patience, that rest that causes them to see wisdom and love. And in situations where they won't look at the offense or the hurts or how people have reacted to them, they won't ever respond to just the feelings in the air. They'll respond to how you respond to those feelings, how you respond to that situation. Jesus, you've found it wisdom to say about the Samaritans who wouldn't let you walk across the land, sent you walking through Judea where they had tried to stone you, people that were leading you to your death. You call them the Good Samaritans for all the ages. And they all get saved 70 years later in the book of Acts. Divine wisdom that's filled with hope. Release it to these ones. In Jesus' name, amen. Love you guys. God bless you. David just saw you on there. Love you. So talking to Shannon this week, David, and so pray for that. Okay. Love you guys. Okay, good night.